Hi everyone, it's Kathy. Thank you so much for joining me. I am super excited to share this card today because I'm going straight into Valentine's Day. I'll be using the newly released Slimline Hearts background die, the Cloud and Grass Edgers dies, the mini Everyday Sentiment stamp set, as well as the Crittercorns stamp set. I started out by stamping this cute little zebra corn onto a piece of Cougar Super Smooth cardstock with Memento Tuxedo black ink, and I did some very simple Copic coloring for this little guy. I started out with N6 and colored in the tops of his ears and all of the stripes that were already pre-shaded for me. Once I was done coloring in those stripes, I colored in his muzzle and the inside of his ears, and for that I used R12 and R01. For his hooves, I started out with C7 and added that along the areas where they would be the darkest. So closer to the bottom of his hoof, and then where one hoof is in front of another, I would add the C7 there. Then I moved on to C5 and blended out the C7 just a little bit more. And then I finished up with C1. It's a pretty big jump to go from C5 all the way down to a C1. But that's the reason why I left just the smallest bit of white space at the top of his very back hoof, and then a small white space at the hoof that's furthest away, because I wanted to make sure that I had a really good highlight. And with the smaller white space area, then it was easier to blend those colors together. It didn't look like the jump was so drastic. Anyway, moving right along, after I was done coloring in his hooves, I decided to add some shading to the body of this little zebra corn. So I started with N3 and I went underneath his chin just so I could have some separation between his head and his body. And I added a little shading around his ears and down his back, and then at the base of his tail and at the bottom of his hind leg that he's sitting on. I blended the N3 out with N0 just a tiny little bit, and I did just go straight over those stripes with the N6 because I knew that staying within the N family, it wasn't going to make that much of a difference. Even if it did blend it out a little bit, it wouldn't be that noticeable. Once I was done adding in the shadows, I moved on to coloring in the wings. I started with BG11 and added that to the wings closest to the body, and then I did a line on the wing that's behind the front wing. I blended that out a little bit with BG10, and then I finished coloring the wings in with BG000. For the little zebra corn's horn, I started with Y26 and did a line down the left side, but also used the Y26 underneath the little swirly parts, and then I blended that out with Y32. After I was done coloring, I set that off to the side and I started to do a little bit of ink blending. I ran a piece of Neenah Classic Crest cardstock through my Gemini Junior with the card builder die set first, and then I started to do some ink blending with a rainbow of pastel colors use of Distress Oxide inks. I started with Spun Sugar, then I went to Dried Marigold, then I went to Squeezed Lemonade, then I went to Cracked Pistachio, and I finished up with Tumbled Glass. I did use a makeup blending brush to do my ink blending, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't get the colors too dark. So usually when I do ink blending, I will go over the colors 2 times, but in this case I did not, because I wanted the colors to stay really very soft and pastel. And I wasn't worried about getting a perfect blend either, because I knew that I was going to be putting the Slimline Heart background die cut on top of that. I know I ran through those colors really quick. I'll make sure to have everything that I used listed in the description box below for you. Next, I ran the Slimline Hearts background die through my Gemini with a piece of Neenah Classic Crest cardstock and added some liquid glue to the back side of that and adhered that right on top of my ink blended panel. And again, the reason that I love that card builder die set is because it fits perfectly behind most of the other Slimline dies by Whimsy Stamps. So that way, when adhering them together, it's pretty quick and easy. I don't have to try and cut one piece to the exact same size because the card builder die does it for me. Anyway, moving right along, After I adhered the die cut panel on top of my rainbow ink blended panel, the hearts reminded me of the little candy hearts. So I decided to stamp a few sentiments, and for that I used the Everyday Mini Sentiment stamp. And for that I used VersaFine Morning Mist ink because I thought that a gray color would be a little better than black. I didn't want the words to stand out too much, but I did want them to be noticeable. While I was playing with the layout off camera, I decided that my little zebracorn needed to be sitting on something, so I die cut a piece of white cardstock with the cloud edger dies, and I adhered that to the die cut panels, and then I trimmed off the excess with my scissors. I used liquid glue to adhere that to the front of my card base, which started out at 8.5 by 7 inches, scored at 3.5 inches on the 7-inch side, so my finished card is 8.5 by 3.5. Of course, I added foam tape to the back of my little zebracorn and adhered her into place. And then I could not resist. Of course, I had to add some sparkle to her wings and her horn. So for that, I used my Wink of Stella glitter pen. And that's it. That finishes up my card for today. All of the products that I used are linked in the description box below for you. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, I'd love it if you would. And don't forget to ring the bell so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.